So this video is going to show you how to make a costume rendering figure. It's just a blank figure, freehand, used from tools that you have, just a pencil and a piece of paper. You don't need any measuring thing, just those two pieces of items. So from the last video, I showed you how to make this measuring tool for any size paper. So I have an 8x11. Again, you can make it on a smaller size paper or bigger size paper, whatever you want to do. But for the purposes, I only had an 8x11 at home. I would prefer a larger piece of paper for more detail, but due to the circumstances, that's what I'm working with. And so whatever you have at home, you can work with as well. So what I've done is I've created a straight edge so that I can then measure out this on my blank piece of paper for my costume. So I've provided the floor and I've provided the top, and then I've provided a dash mark where those eighths are going to be. And the reason that is the case is because the human body traditionally is 8 heads. So that's what we're going to work with, is we're going to start with the head, and then from that measurement of the head, kind of work our way down, and each section of the body kind of falls into place with that 8th section that we've kind of drawn into. So the next step would be to start with that head. And so what I've done here is I've just drawn a simple head, and that is the first eighth of the body. Note that it's just the head. It's just top of the skull down to the chin. The neck is not included, but I showed you that just to show that where the neck actually lies. So you're not going to make a tiny head with a neck that kind of falls in within that. So just within that first eighth, that's what you should draw. So go ahead and try and draw your head out right now. The next step would be to get the shoulders in. And so the shoulders traditionally are one distance of a head. And so you kind of can measure with your measuring tool out one head distance to see where the shoulder lies. The next step would be to start to form the upper torso. And so I've left a space for the arms. And so I've just kind of drawn in to the waist. And the waist is going to be this hash mark. So the first is the top of the skull. The second is going to be the chin. This third is kind of traditionally where the nipples kind of end up. But then here is kind of the waist of the upper torso. So that fourth halfway point is the torso there. So why don't you give that a try right now? Now working our way out, what I've done is now that we have our waistline, I've made a semicircle curve out because that's traditionally where our elbows fall. So I've drawn an arm only to the elbow because if you think about it, if you hold down your elbow, that's where your waist is. So go ahead and try that step right now. So our next step, after we kind of start to sketch in the upper arms, is to get the hips part of the figure down. And so if we have our hash marks down this way, this fifth one is going to be where the hips protrude out the farthest. So that's the next step. So why don't you try that right now? So after you've established the hips, then you want to establish the upper leg. And so along with where the hips kind of lie, this is kind of where the crotch kind of starts. And so you want to start the inner line of the leg and the outer leg. And then eventually when you get down to this mark, this is going to be where the kneecaps traditionally end up. So just kind of draw and start to shape the upper leg down to the kneecaps. And you can see I started to try to sketch out where that would be and kind of had to erase and kind of keep going. But that's the next step, is the upper leg. And so the final step, kind of the shins down to the feet, you'll note I kind of had to modify my version of this. So what I then did after the kneecaps is I started to draw the shin and the calf muscle down to the feet. And so sometimes I draw just one profile foot just to show that. Sometimes I just kind of draw a circle to show that it's there, but then you can have a shoe if you want on one foot. But then what I've really had to adapt over my time is that I've used the 8-person figure, but sometimes it doesn't work out with the legs, and so it's just a little under. And so we use this to kind of measure out the bar of the body, but once we kind of get down into the lower part of the leg, that doesn't hold true anymore, and kind of just, it's about 7.5 heads actually. And so that's kind of where I end up with my last part of the leg. So we still have to finish out the arm, and so I'll show you that right now, but why don't you try to finish out your leg? So to finish out our figure, just like how the waist radiates out to the elbow, the crotch radiates out to where the wrist will end up. And so you can do these half circle curves from where this point is, because then you can make your arms however you want. I kind of just have a neutral figure, but you could that way you could have a hand on a hip, you could have a hand out, you could have a hand holding something, you could have a hand raised, but within that, that's how you can kind of gauge where that distance is for that arm. And I just kind of drew in a quick blob of a hand. But this is a very basic figure. This is how I usually start. I'm not the most skilled at drawing, so I really want to make sure I have it down. But then I have this to go off of. And so I put this under paper, and I can kind of trace and fix all my mistakes. And so this is a tool I then use for my costume rendering. So just like how I have this never becomes a final rendering. This is color croquet. This is going to be used to show another step into the costume design. So you have a blank figure, and then you will use this to trace your other renderings for your costumes. All right, hope you're well. So that's all you have to do today is kind of make your measuring tool and make one of these for today. Let me know if you have any questions.